Good afternoon, councillors, members of the public, officers, welcome along. I declare this meeting open. Under announcements, I have a couple here. We had the Beijing delegation visit last week, a very successful visit, and I also received a courtesy visit from the new Consul General of Malaysia, and both visits talked around the opportunities for business development between Beijing and Malaysia and our city and the Bunbury Geograph region in general, and those areas will be explored by the Bunbury Geograph Economic Alliance into the future. Also want to record congratulations to the organising committee for the Southwest Migrant Memorial, which was open on Saturday. Fantastic structure, very successful event. Probably about 2,000 people were there to witness that. And my fuel costs for the period were $76.90. Councillor Warnock is an apology tonight. She's unwell. Declarations of interest. We have Councillors Cook and Councillor Morris has two there. Are there any further declarations for tonight's meeting, councillors? Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Cook, seconder. Councillor Hayward, all in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. We also have the Heritage Advisory Committee minutes of the 10th of October. So I'm prepared to move that we receive those. Councillor Kelly, Councillor Cook, all in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. Are there any petitions? We have a request from Mr. Jim Ponsonby to speak to item 10.25. Those who agree with that, please indicate. That's approved. So, I guess Mr. Ponsonby is in the audience. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. He's not coming. So, who are you? Okay, thanks, Terry. Have a seat. So when I call you up, you have 5 minutes to speak to us, okay? So it won't be right now, so just thank you. We all happy with that, councillors? I'm pretty relaxed. Yeah, that's fine. So dealing with tonight's agenda, I just want to clarify 10.11 and 10.12 have got a committee recommendation and an executive recommendation. So for the purpose of en bloc voting, I'm taking them as the executive recommendations. I've spoken to the chairman of that committee and he's relaxed with that. So coming out so far, we have item 10.25 and item 10.42. Are there any other items that councillors wishes to raise? Councillor Steck.
10.21, please, sir.
10.21. Anybody else? 10.25 is out. We're going to debate that, yeah. All good? Someone move the balance. Councillor Cook, Councillor Hayward, all in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. We go to 10.21. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation? Councillor McCleary, second up. Councillor McGuell. Councillor McCleary. Councillor McGuell. Speaker against.
Sir, I'd just rather have a question, if I may. That's why I pulled the item out. Just in the welcome message under the executive summary, it discusses on the third line down that Bunbury is one of the fastest growing regional cities in Australia. I dispute that, and I would rather that it is an innovative, inclusive regional city. And I'd also point out that the last line says it's the second capital city of Western Australia, and I hate to point this out, but lots of outlets continue to use this language, and there's only one capital city, and that's Perth. So I would say that it is the regional city of the southwest, but I could hardly say it's the second capital city of Western Australia, sir. And given those 2 points is the only reason that I pulled this item out, sir.
Is there a speaker against? I'll put it. All in favour? Those against? 3 against. That's carried. We move to 10.25. Terry Cowell. Thank you. Welcome. There's a clock in front of me here to guide you.
Can I firstly just say thank you, Your Worship the Mayor and councillors, for allowing me to speak on behalf of Jim and for having us here today. We obviously speak on the motion that is up there today. Under the Bushfires Act, local governments are not required to appoint employees to be Chief Bushfire Control Officers or Deputy Chief Bushfire Control Officers. The majority of local governments, including Harvey, Capel, Dardanup, Busselton, Warina, Collie, etc., appoint these 2 positions from volunteer bushfire brigade ranks. The reason for this is that the senior members of a volunteer bushfire brigade have the skills, local knowledge, experience and qualifications to undertake the roles which many local government employees do not have, and there is no need for local government to appoint the chief or deputy from employees. It is not often that the local government will be involved with the operational requirements relating to the bushfire prevention, preparedness and response. Council policy determines the qualifications that various positions such as the Chief, Deputy Chief, Brigade Captain are required to have to fulfil each of the positions. It can be assured that the members as put forward by the Bunbury Volunteer Bushfire Brigade have the qualifications together with the knowledge and experience to fulfil the roles. Local government can simply appoint a bushfire control officer, not necessarily a chief or deputy, for sections of the Act to specifically deal with such matters as described in Part 2, Administration of the Act, and or Part 3, Prevention of Bushfires, which include the determination of or extension of prohibited and restricted burning periods, ensuring that property owner occupiers plough breaks or take other steps to prevent the outbreak of fire or the escape of fire, restrict movement of vehicles, restrict the burning of garden refuge or certain plants, issue notices relevant to the Act, issue infringement notices for any contravention of the Act, instigate a prosecution for any contravention of the Act, recover costs relating to the action taken by local government in accordance with the Act, demand a person's name and address. As stated, Chief and Deputy Chiefs are appointed primarily to carry out normal brigade activities in accordance with the Act. Normal brigade activities include the following: the prevention, control or extinguishment of bushfires, any act or operation at or about the scene of a bushfire or in connection with a bushfire which is necessary for, directed towards or incidental to the control or suppression of the fire or the prevention of spread of the fire, or in any other way necessarily associated with the fire, including travelling and support services such as meals and communication systems. Any bushfire prevention activity, including the burning, ploughing or clearing of fire breaks, or any other operation including, but without being limited to, the inspection of fire breaks or other works and the survey of areas for the purpose of detecting fire or ascertaining the need for precautions against the outbreak of fire, but not including the activities of an owner or occupier providing a fire break or for fire prevention works on his own property in order to comply with a notice given under section 33(1), 34(2), 35(1) or a local law made under section 33(5)(a). I might skip ahead a little bit because I'm going to run out of time. We doubt very much that the team leader of Community Law, Safety and Emergency Management will be involved with normal brigade activities and will most probably have their time consumed with Part 2 and Part 3 of the Act. Therefore, the team leader of Community Law, Safety and Emergency Management should be appointed by Council as a bushfire control officer to administer and enforce the provisions of the Act that are relevant to the position, including determination of or extension of prohibited and restricted burning periods, ensure the property owner occupiers plough breaks or take other steps to prevent the outbreak of fire, restrict moving vehicles, issue notices relevant to the Act, issue infringement notices for the contravention of the Act, instigate prosecution for any action contravention of the Act, recover costs relating to any action taken by local government in accordance with the Act. As to the agenda report as provided by Bunbury CEO and the executive recommendation that is contained in the council agenda, we advise the CEO did meet with the Brigade Executive on the 3rd of October, where he asked the Brigade Executive to provide its recommendations for positions of Chief Bushfire Control Officer and Deputy Chief Bushfire Control Officer, whereas the agenda report states the CEO only asked the Brigade for its recommendation for the role as Chief. If this was correct, then why did the Brigade and its response to the CEO stating the recommendations being for the Chief and Deputy positions?
Ms Cowley, I'm sorry, you'll just have to wind up. Have you got anything else there?
I have just got what the Brigade recommended, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So, in closing, we seek the Council's support to appoint members from the Bunbury Volunteer Bushfire Brigade with the skills, knowledge, experience and qualifications to fulfil the roles as Chief and Deputy Chief, as previously recommended to the CEO by the Brigade, as follows. Blair Fisher as the Chief Bushfire Control Officer for the Bunbury District, Milan Kitto as the Deputy Chief Bushfire Control Officer for the Bunbury District, and that the appointments be advertised in accordance with the Act.
Thanks very much. Take a seat. Thank you. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation?
Can I ask a question, please, sir?
I'll have the recommendation move first, and I'll come back to you. Councillor Hayward?
Yep.
Is there a seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Steck, you have a question?
Yes, please, sir. Under the terms of the Local Government Act, this is probably through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO, it's a different act from the Bushfires Act, but in a state of an emergency like when we had the tornado come through and we've had SES services and all of those alike, it is the local government that coordinates all of the services. Is that correct?
No. No, I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's a hazard coordinator for each different type of emergency. So local governments now are more normally involved in the recovery phase of the emergency rather than being the incident controller.
Yeah, my understanding, Councillor Steck, is that the senior officer, the police officer for the region takes control, and then that person would then seek the expertise of if it's a bushfire or depending on the SES or what have you. So that's what happens. Is there a speaker? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hayward, did you want to speak? No, not just yet, Councillor Smith. I'll just ask Councillor Hayward as a mover if he wishes to speak to it.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. Councillors, our volunteer bushfires do a fantastic job. We're very, very lucky to have them. There's no doubt at all. This is actually a move forward. Previously, staff filled those roles, as I understand. I think Neil Dyer filled that role. And what the work that the bushfires do for us is really important, and I still see the value as a councillor in terms of having one of our key staff very, very closely involved with the brigade. And I think the fact that we've moved away from having it the Chief Bushfire Control Officer as an employee of the City of Bunbury to appointing a volunteer is a fantastic step forward, and certainly and I hope it's seen by the volunteers as well, councillors, that that's a step in the right direction for us, and that we're moving towards that. So I'd encourage councillors to support it. I think that it's a good outcome, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Councillor McCleary, did you wish to speak? Councillor Smith, you had an amendment?
Yes, I did, Mr Mayor. I just wondered if it was possible to add after recommendation 1 that they appoint Mr Blair Fisher as the Chief Bushfire Control Officer according to etc., and a member of the Bunbury Bushfire Volunteer Brigade as the Deputy.
Well, I'd suggest you vote against number 2 and foreshadow that you're going to move an alternate motion if number 2 is defeated. Is the Speaker against?
Just formally ask that they be taken separately.
Yes, no problems at all.
And not to be pedantic, I think there are 2 appointments here. Should that be advertised in Gazette, the appointments?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Good reading. Is there a speaker against? So I'll put 1. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Number 2. All in favour, please indicate. 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? That's carried. Councillors Kelly, Smith, Morris, Steck and Steele voted against. The rest voted for. And number 3, with the addition of S, which has now been done, all in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Is Mr. Fisher in the audience, Blair Fisher? Blair, thank you very much for taking on that role. We really appreciate it. Now we move to item 10.42. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation, please? Councillors, we need to have this on the agenda, on the minutes. I need a thank you, Councillor McCleary. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Steck. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor? Do you wish to speak? The speaker against? I'll put it all in favour. Sorry, Councillor Cook, you spoke against. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I intend to vote against the executive recommendation, which pains me greatly because I normally do agree with people. But nevertheless, I'm proposing an alternate motion, which is essentially the same. The only change is the term of 10 years with a further option of 5 years. Do you want me to read the whole thing, sir?
Yes, please.
Okay. The Council agrees to grant a lease agreement to the Moorabinda Croquet Club Incorporated over portion of Reserve 30601 Hay Park Parade Road for a term of 10 years with a further option of 5 years subject to the terms and conditions as specified in the report and the following. 1. The applicant pay all costs associated with the lease application including document preparation and advertising. 2. Approval of the Minister for Lands. And 3. Advertising in accordance with the provisions of Section 3.5 of the Local Government Act 1995. This club has been in existence for 114 years. It's been located at Hay Park for 40 years. A 10-year lease provides some degree of certainty to the club and ensures that they can plan for a sustainable future. There is talk of the Hay Park Master Plan. However, it is unlikely, in my view, that any major changes will be recommended for the athletics track, the tennis complex or the croquet club in the short or medium term.
Councillor Cook, sorry to interrupt your sensational speech here,
Thank you,
but
Mr. Mayor, it took me
you're
hours to
foreshadowing a motion, but now
Yes,
you're
I am.
debating it, so just thank you.
No worries.
I
So,
love it.
Councillors, I urge you to vote the recommendation down and then support my alternate recommendation.
Right,
Thank you.
you.
Question, sir.
Yes, Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could that just be an amendment because she's only changing the 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's a substantial amendment. That's why I've had the chat before. I think 5 to 10 is a substantial amendment. That's why I'm not accepting it. So is there a further, Councillor, a speaker for the recommendation? Councillor Kelly.
Just with regards to the potential amendment that Councillor Cook has suggested, and forgive me if I hadn't picked this up earlier, has this been discussed with the Moorabinda Croquet Club prior to the matter coming to Council? And the second point is that can we just get a little bit of an explanation as to why a 10-year would be off the agenda from the exec in terms of the administrative laydown, if you like?
Sure. Yeah, Mr. John Jury spoke to me late last week, I think it was, about this matter. But CEO, the broader question that Councillor Kelly has posed about contacting Moorabinda when we decided to stick to the policy of 5 years, and would a 10-year create any administrative obstacles for us?
Through Mr Mayor, I'll defer probably to the manager of property and economic development and lands in terms of the contact, but I can, in terms of the 10-year versus a 5-year, the standard that has been applied to most of the, I think to all of the city's leases has been the 5+5. All of our new leases do have a redevelopment clause contained in them, so if there was to be any change into the future, that would still occur irrespective of whether it was a 5 or a 10-year lease. So a 10-year lease is not insurmountable. And I'll defer to the manager. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms Anderson.
Yes, that's correct, Mr Mayor. So my understanding is the officer dealing with the negotiations made contact with Moorabinda, I believe via email and I thought telephone call. The officer's not here to confirm that. And we also met with Moorabinda late last week to discuss the options. That is why the officer actually put in the agenda item that Moorabinda did seek a 10-year plus 5-year term.
Okay.
The standards are, however, for every other lease forward 5+5.
Thank you very much. Is there a speaker for the executive recommendation? Do you wish to close, Councillor Cleary?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Only to say that I think we should stay with standardisation. I know that might be a disappointment to this particular club, but I think it is important that we stay with the standard, because that's why we've been working very hard with our not-for-profits, with our leases, and this is one area that we need to stay firm with. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. Those against? That's lost. Councillor Cook, you foreshadowed your alternate, which
Mayor, may I move
we've
my
got it
alternate
there.
motion?
Is there a seconder? Councillor
Happy to
Hayward.
second.
Do you wish to speak, Councillor Cook?
No, thank you.
Councillor Hayward? Is there a speaker against? I'll put it all in favour. Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillors, we go to 10.5.2. Councillor Morris, you're leaving us. This matter requires an absolute majority. Can I have someone move the recommendation, please?
So moved, sir.
Councillor Steck, is there a seconder? Councillor Cook. Is there any debate on this, lightly, councillors? I'll put it all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks. .1, can I have someone move that request? Thank you, Councillor Cook. Seconder, Councillor Brown. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors, members of the public and officers. I declare this meeting closed at 5:53 p.m.